Hello chemists, and welcome to the next video in the series on the chemical earth. In this video we're going to start our look at elements. Elements are the building blocks of matter. They're the basis upon which all compounds and mixtures for that matter are built. At the moment we know of about 118 elements, many of these of which have been synthesized in laboratories. They're very unstable. They've been created basically to verify their existence, but many of them don't last very long at all. So we can't really do very much in terms of determining their properties or characteristics. But nevertheless, so far, around about 118 different elements are known. We also know that elements combine in fixed ratios to form compounds and in variable ratios in mixtures. When we're looking at elements, there's a couple of important things that we need to be aware of. First of all, they are one of the group of pure substances, which also include compounds. The difference between elements and compounds is that elements cannot be decomposed chemically, certainly not with any simple chemical methods that we can use in the laboratory. One of the reasons for that is that they are composed of similar atoms. We don't identify them as identical atoms, and there is a reason for that later on, and it's related to the concept of isotopes. But nevertheless, the number of protons in the nucleus determines which element we're talking about. So the protons are the determining factor as to which element we're actually looking at. And elements too have fairly predictable and testable physical and chemical properties. We're going to look at a few of these in the next few lessons. One of the ways of trying to deal with the amount of information that we have in chemistry is to use a form of shorthand. And one form of shorthand is through the use of chemical symbols. These chemical symbols are represented on the periodic table, and you'll remember that I've told you that in all of your major exams you will be provided with a periodic table. So it's not an important thing for you to be trying to memorize the symbols of different elements. And in fact, there's quite a lot of information that you can gain from the periodic table when you start to use that as an effective tool. Most of the chemical symbols are based on the name of the element. Now, one of the small difficulties, I guess, or complexities that's associated with symbols is the fact that many of the symbols were allocated when the most common version of the name of these elements was a Latin name. And so therefore you will find something like natrium, which we don't actually use. We use the term sodium. But natrium was the original name of sodium, hence why sodium has the symbol capital N small a. When we're looking at symbols, there's a couple of important rules that we need to be aware of, and the first of those is that the first letter is always a capital. Now, some of the symbols occur as a single letter and others as two, and whether it's just one or two, that first letter or that only letter will always be a capital. However, if there is a second letter, it will always be a lowercase. And there's some very important reasons why we need to follow this convention. For one reason more than any other, in that it helps us to avoid any ambiguities. So you can see the symbol for carbon is capital C. The symbol for oxygen is capital O. The symbol for copper or cuprum is capital C small u. And the symbol for magnesium is capital M small g. So, a couple of questions for you to have a look at. Can you think of 5 elements which have only a single letter symbol? And can you identify the difference between capital C small o and capital C capital O? Let's have a look at the symbols first. 5 elements which have only a single letter. Well, we have hydrogen, we have carbon, we have boron, we have nitrogen, we have oxygen, we have fluorine, we have tungsten. There are quite a number of different elements that all have just a single letter as their symbol. But of course, there are a much larger number that have two. And the difference between CO, C small o, and capital C capital O, well, capital C small o is the symbol for cobalt. And cobalt is an element. It's actually a metallic element. But when we see capital C and capital O, this means we have a carbon and an oxygen. In fact, you may recognize this as the chemical formula for carbon monoxide. And we will actually have a look at how we name different compounds a little bit later in this unit. Thank you for watching.